Well, good morning, everyone. Thomas Montgomery. It's a beautiful Friday morning. Today is January 6th, 2023. We get together with our distribution partners most weekday mornings at this time. We talk strategies, tips, techniques, share success stories, but ultimately we're here to support each of you. We have two primary types of distribution partners: white label partners and affiliates. There's no cost to sign up for either. The affiliate role is the simplest. We provide you a free landing page and you refer people to your landing page, and you're paid off those conversions. While it's not MLM or network marketing, we do pay 3 levels deep. White label partners are our leadership team. These are typically more sophisticated individuals that really are running their own business. They contract with the clients directly. We provide the back office services, and we do a nice simple 50-50 split. So 2 different roles. Our topic today is applicable to both. And so let's kind of set the conversation up before we dig in. So what are the 3 things that you and I do? Let's call ourselves technical advisors as an industry or as a description. You and I are technical advisors. We work with small businesses to do what? 3 things: to help improve their financial literacy, to help them develop lender-compliant loan packages, and thirdly, become credible enough on paper to qualify for a guaranteed minimum of $100,000. As we've covered on some of our other discussions, what we do is credible, legitimate. We do exactly what we promise to do. And so part of that, based upon that third element, is that we need to assist the clients in becoming credible enough on paper to get the funding. You might say, well, what does that mean? What are the credibility requirements? Well, it differs, right? There's different sources of capital, and each source of capital has its own underwriting criteria. So when we work with a client and gather their initial data set, then we can start to create a capital raise strategy, see where we're going, and then determine, are they credible enough now? Is everything in order? Great. And if not, then we can assist them. So we're not looking to filter out or screen out clients. We'll get them from where they're at to where they need to be. In terms of credibility, as we've discussed before, it's often summarized as the 3 C's: credit, capacity, and collateral. There's 2 types of credit: personal and business, and if they need help with either of those, do we help? Of course. Capacity, also referred to as cash flow, being able to demonstrate that we can afford to service the debt, the money that we want to borrow. Can we help with that if there's an issue? Absolutely. The third of those is our topic today. What do you and I do to help small businesses who have a collateral shortfall? What's a collateral shortfall? Well, we always want to look at this in the eyes of the lender, because the truth is, it doesn't matter what you think, and it really doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the lender thinks, right? Because if we meet the lender's criteria, then we get approved. The client gets approved. So from a collateral perspective, and not all sources of capital require collateral, but most do. That's the issue where the lender would like to have something pledged that if the borrower shouldn't repay, in other words, if the borrower doesn't repay as agreed, there's something that the lender can collect, take to be able to offset their losses. So when you go finance a car, you pledge the car title as collateral, don't you? When you go buy a house and you get a mortgage, you're pledging the home as collateral. That makes sense, right? That's the way it works. Well, when it comes to business funding, a lot of times we're going after what we'd call working capital, cash. And so what's the chances that the bank could come get cash back if the borrower doesn't pay as agreed? Not too good, because usually the cash is going to be gone. Therefore, collateral is relevant. So that's one of the things that you and I do, especially if you're a white label partner, is we collect data from the clients, and we look at both their personal financial statement, which we call the PFS, and their balance sheet. Those are 2 similar documents, but for different entities, if you will. The balance sheet shows assets and liabilities of the business. The PFS shows assets and liabilities as well as net worth of the individual. So if there is an inconsistency between the amount of money that the client wants to borrow, the capital raise goal, and the amount of assets they have to pledge, we call that a collateral shortfall. So at that point, we have really, I guess, two primary options. We could either reduce the amount of funding requested to match the assets that the client has, or we could add assets to the client's balance sheet or PFS, either one, and have enough assets to pledge. Does that make sense? So the collateral support program, which is our topic of the day today, is a resource that we provide to help clients overcome a collateral shortfall. This is relevant to you for a couple reasons. Number one, you'll probably find that some of your clients have a collateral shortfall. And this is one way, not the only way, but this is one way to resolve that. And then secondly, we do a revenue share with you. You can, it's what we call being a debt buyer. You can literally buy the portfolio, which I know I haven't explained yet, I will, but you can literally buy the portfolio and resell it and make money off of it. Just like, if I needed a car, you could buy the car that I want to buy, turn around, sell it to me, and make money off of the markup. So let's drill in. So I think this should go without saying, but just want it on record. So the collateral support program is a legal, it's an ethical, it's a real transaction. It's not made up, it's not fairy dust. We have sold collateral to large, sophisticated law firms. Now they're buying larger amounts for different purposes, but this is real. It's just unusual, right? Sometimes people aren't familiar with things, and it's easy if you don't have anything to reconcile with it in your mind, your education, your experience. Sometimes we want to come to the conclusion, well, that sounds too good to be true, or that can't be real, but it is real. So the collateral support program is where we are putting together a portfolio of accounts receivables, real accounts receivables, and transferring it to the client. Well, why would the client want that? Well, accounts receivables are assets. What we just said in this example, we're trying to solve a problem of when a client doesn't have enough assets, doesn't have enough collateral to pledge. So by transferring assets to the client, now we're able to resolve that collateral shortfall. Let's use an example that is much different. Let's say you and I own an office building together. And the office, we're just gonna use round numbers. The office building is worth $100,000. So we got a buddy trying to get a loan, and he doesn't have enough collateral. Could we theoretically give that office building to our buddy, truly transfer ownership, transfer title over? Now our buddy has the office building as collateral. Sure, there's nothing wrong with it. As long as all the paperwork is done, that the ownership is actually transferred, we're not just wink, wink saying it's been done. Sure, yeah. And you can do that with any assets. We could give him machinery, we could give him equipment, we could give him automobiles, we could give him cash. But regardless, it makes sense, right? So if you add assets to a client's financials, now we can resolve the collateral shortfall. So that is the purpose of the collateral support program. Our model is unique in a couple ways. So in the broader marketplace, in the macro environment, there are debt instruments that are being packaged up in portfolios that are being bought and sold on a regular basis, just like we sold a big portfolio to that law firm I referenced out of Austin, Texas. Typically, those portfolios are made up of either defaulted mortgages, defaulted auto loans, or defaulted credit card debts. Those are the three primary types. But there is actually a fourth category, and that's the space that we're in. So it's unique in the type of asset. And then secondly, we build small portfolios where in the macro world and in the larger space, they don't want to deal with small portfolios. It's too much work. And we feel that sometimes. But we put together portfolios in increments of $100,000. I'll make this a little larger so you can see it. So it's in bite-sized pieces. Now, we have some clients that need multiple portfolios based upon the amount of the collateral shortfall, because it's just a mathematical equation, right? On one hand, how much are we seeking to borrow? And on the other hand, how much collateral do we have to pledge? If we're wanting to borrow more than the collateral, then we need to add more collateral. And so it may be one portfolio or multiple. Don't worry about that. But we package it to make things streamlined in $100,000 portfolios. So let's drill into some frequently asked questions. So when we're doing this, does the client have to pay anything? Well, yes, because they're literally getting $100,000 of assets. You will determine how much they pay because you're considered in this transaction the debt buyer and the debt seller. So depending upon how much you want to charge the client, they would pay you for that, and they could pay you up front or over time. But these are real assets, and there has to be shown consideration, the legal term. It can't just be fake, because if it's fake, then that's bad, and we are not going to do anything bad. So question number one, does the client need to pay for the assets for the collateral support program, for the receivables? Yes. How much do they pay? Have to ask you, because you determine that, not us. Secondly, again, second question, what exactly does this mean? What are these receivables? So these are true accounts receivables, And so those are transferred to the client. So now they can put those receivables on their balance sheet or on their personal financial statement to show that they have money owed to them. And you say, well, is that real? Yeah, it's real. The title has been transferred over to them. Now that the debts are owed to them. Keep in mind that these are what's called non-performing debt instruments. So this is not the same as accounts receivable invoicing or factoring, where there's a steady stream of money coming in and there's some proportion of that being advanced. These are non-performing debts. Notice when I gave you the examples of non-performing, defaulted mortgages, defaulted auto loans. So are they still real? Are they still valid? Absolutely. But these are instances where the debtors, the people that owe the money for the receivables, are not actively paying. So then once in a while I have someone say, well, oh, then they're worthless. Well, that's a ridiculous statement illustrating financial illiteracy. No, they're not worthless. They're real debts. So we may have to pursue some liquidation strategies, which I'll talk about, to get them to pay. But yes, they definitely owe it. If we find out that we can't collect off of a given file due to bankruptcy or death, then we replace those files, of course, and that's part of the written agreement. So what we're doing is helping clients become credible enough so they can get funding. Now, again, I know that it's easy to drop back and say, oh, shit, Tom, man, my clients just want funding. They don't want to have to ding around with this. Well, if they're credible enough without it, then we don't want to try to solve a problem that doesn't exist. That's not a good use of your time, my time, and you and I are advocates for the client. But if there's an inconsistency in the amount of collateral they have and the amount that they need, thus a collateral shortfall, then it's very responsible. It's really your my obligation to fix that problem. Otherwise, they're not going to get funding, or at least that type of funding. So what happens is the client signs up for the collateral support program. We transfer over the assets, which are accounts receivables and $100,000 blocks. They could get one or multiple. Goes on their balance sheet, and we've resolved the collateral shortfall. But that's really only half the story. The other half is we will then work with the client to liquidate the receivables so it creates positive cash flow. In other words, help them collect the money that's owed. So a good analogy on this is, let's say that you and I see a house, a rental house for sale. And would we go buy that house if it was a good deal, whereby we could put it up on the market, get a renter, a tenant in? The renter, the tenant, is now paying monthly, and the amount that's coming in is more than our mortgage. Then that's a good economic deal, right? It's creating free cash flow. That's the whole Robert Kiyosaki concept of buying assets that spit off cash. Well, this is designed to do the same thing. Since these are real debts with real debtors, then we want to liquidate the debt. In other words, convert it from receivables to cash. In brief, collect the money that's owed. And so while the debt buyer, the client that now owns the receivables, can do as they wish, what we encourage, what we hope that they'll do, what we can help them do, is to liquidate that. There are two primary ways of liquidating receivables, especially non-performing receivables, as these are typically. We can either send the debtors to a collection agency, and we've done that some, and we have collection agencies that we could refer what we call the debt buyer to, and that's an option. The collection agency will ask them to pay, demand for them to pay, report to the credit bureaus, and so forth. So that's one option. What we found, quite honestly, is that litigation is more successful than collection. So what is litigation? Litigation is where we will, on behalf of the client, literally sue the debtors. And so there's a whole litigation process that we don't really have time or have a need to go through in detail. So in summary, why is the collateral support program important? Because you and I want to help clients get funding. That's the goal. But it's not just, oh, I want to get funded. It has to be an issue of, I need to move from not being qualified to being qualified. And if there's a collateral shortfall, this resolves it. And not only does it resolve the collateral shortfall, it puts them in a position to generate positive cash flow, like owning that rental property we talked about. So who has questions, comments, concerns on the collateral support program? Some of you love it. Frankly, sometimes I feel like some of you hate it. And so we wanted to put it on the agenda today to talk about, to answer questions. So I spent the first 18 minutes or so giving the broader view to make sure that you understand why it exists and the structure of it. Now let's drill in. Some of you are asking questions that are not relevant to the collateral support program. So we're going to table those questions for now. I want to make sure that we're all laser focused on the topic ahead of us. So it's like if you're in college and you're in chemistry right now, we're only going to talk about chemistry questions. You may have a great question about calculus, but that is not relevant. Francette asked, can we send this to our clients? Well, you can, but we need to decide the role that you want to be in, Francette. And I'm not talking about affiliate versus white label partner. So either you can be a debt buyer, in other words, you buy a portfolio and then you sell it to your clients at a markup. And that's really what this was designed to do. So, you have someone that wants to buy a rental home. Well, you own a rental home. And so then you can turn around and sell the rental home to the end client. So if that's the case, we need to transfer over to you a portfolio, Francette or anyone else. Now you have that in inventory, if you will, and then we can support you, because we call you a debt buyer then. And so then we could support you in the debt selling process. If you, alternatively, if you don't want to buy the collateral and turn around and sell it to your clients or to others, then we need to control all the communication about this to the client, because we're kind of on the hook. So long drawn out to help you understand, you have two different roles. If you want us to provide the collateral support to your client, then we can do that from beginning to end. If you're wanting to be in the revenue stream and buy and sell debt portfolios, which would be a smart thing to do, because you'll probably make on average about $5,000 per portfolio, but ignoring that for a moment, then we would support you in that capacity. So you have to decide on that. Okay, so Jeanette's asking some questions about liquidating the portfolio. Yes, yeah. So we have a dedicated team, and I'm frankly not on that team, so I understand a fair amount. Now, I'll be responsible for the litigation. So if a debt buyer buys a portfolio and they want us to help liquidate it, then I'll be I work with the courts all the time. And to me, I enjoy that. Maybe that sounds negative to you, but I mean, yesterday I was in contact with the courthouse on these deals. So what we do is we will issue, if we're doing the liquidation, I'll just state this briefly. What we'll do is we will send out a demand letter to the debtor, and then we'll initiate suit and go through the legal process. So the debt buyer doesn't have to show up in other words, a client or you, for example, Fran said, you wouldn't have to go to court. You wouldn't have to be involved with the messiness. If we're handling the litigation, we handle it from beginning to end for you. So yeah, Jeanette, if for your portfolio, if you need help liquidating it, that's not a problem. Just get with our collateral support team and we'd be pleased to do that. So Aziz, again, you're asking questions are unrelated to this. I want to keep us focused on this topic. We're in chemistry right now, so we're only going to talk about chemistry. No, we're talking about collateral support programs. So if you have other questions or comments, let's address it offline just to make sure that everyone is laser focused on this topic. Francette asked about charges. It's up to you. If you want to pass on the portfolio with no markup, you can do that. Typically, here's how the dollars work. Normally, so we got $100,000 portfolio. Normally, you would sell this for 10 cents on the dollar, so 10,000. You're going to buy it for 5 cents on the dollar, 5,000. And so with that being said, that's the normal pricing model, but you can do more or less. That would give you $5,000 of pure profit just by flipping these portfolios while providing benefit to the client. All right. And then, yeah, Jeanette brings up a good point. You know, she doesn't want to be chasing down debtors. She doesn't want to be out collecting the money. Well, that's fine. I mean, take a hospital, for example. A hospital has bad debt, right? People that don't pay for their surgeries or procedures. Does the hospital want to be the bad guy? Typically not in the community. They will outsource it. So they'll outsource it to a collection agency, which is one option we talked about, or to a litigation firm, the other option we talked about. So what we're not saying is that the holder of the debt, the client, or even you, has to go and chase the money down, right? There's two primary methods of liquidation, and neither of those require you to get your hands dirty, if you will. So we understand that most of you don't want to be debt collectors, and most clients don't want to be debt collectors, just like hospitals don't want to be debt collectors. And so you outsource that function. All right, well, we try to wrap up early on Friday, so let me just field the last question or two, and then we'll wrap up and we'll be back Monday and we can address other questions you have individually. Francette asked, can this work for startups? It's incredibly valuable and relevant for startups because the startups often have a weak balance sheet. They often have a collateral shortfall. So there's nothing wrong with taking a business that was formed yesterday and putting $100,000 receivable on their balance sheet today. It's no different than if they went out and sold $100,000 of their products or services that are on account, in other words, owed to them. So this is great for startups. It's great for existing businesses. It's real. It's legitimate. It's not going to get anyone in trouble, and it's going to help the holder of the debt create positive cash flow through the liquidation process. All right, well, we try to end early on Friday, so we're going to stick with that. We'll see you back Monday. Let us know if you have any questions. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.